AM 590, KXSP Omaha's ESPN Radio. It's time for the Front Stretch, brought to you by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Online at joeskarting.com.
Welcome to the Front Stretch. It is an absolutely beautiful Sunday morning. I don't think we could have asked for a better day in the Midwest. Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Joined Dan Taylor. How are you doing this morning? And my buddy Andrew Kaziski. Andrew, thank you.
Good morning, guys.
Brought to you by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Booking prices, hours, and so much more. It's all located online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. Give them a call today and get your event scheduled. 712-256-5278. Buddy Ray's the one you always want to talk to. He'll sit down and schedule things for you. Typical hours at Joe's Karting. I believe they open up at 2 o'clock, but if you want to do a noon outing, just give him a call, give him a little bit of notice, and he'll open up the shop for you and get you out there. And I tell you what, there's nothing better of a corporate kind of team-building atmosphere, bachelor party kind of a thing. It's such a great time to go out there and race, and it's not something that you have to stand and wait in line forever for when you go out and do these outings. It's a great time. So get to joeskarting.com, karting with a K, or give them a call today, 712-256-5278, and get your event scheduled. Located right over there in Council Bluffs. And I can't say it enough how much of a great time it is. I know, Andrew, last night you did a little bit of racing over at McCool Junction, right?
I did. Yes, I did stop down there last night. Had a pretty good run. I wasn't planning on running by no means. I was just working in the garage earlier this week, and I found something that just seemed a little sketchy, and I tried it out, and I got better go out there and see what the car is going to do, and it worked.
Now, are we talking Chad Knaus kind of sketchy?
It's 100% legal. It's all stupidity by the driver not finding this earlier.
Oh, so there was a little bit of a setup issue as to the reason for your misfortunes this season.
Yes, I still had a lot of misfortunes that I'd like to take back if I could, but I don't know how.
Well, I tell you what, late night last night, not only for dirt track drivers, but also myself, NASCAR guy, who sat through several hours of rain delays at watching the coverage at Richmond International Raceway, and wow, what a race. I mean, what a race. I mean, there wasn't a lot of action on the track as far as you would expect for a short track and for a track that is has a tendency to be slick. But there was a lot of scenarios that were playing out, especially that last green flag run that went about 90 laps. And all you could do is keep your eye on who's going to make it, the 24 or the 18. And in turn 4, we're going to break down who made it, exactly who made it, and what we feel like their chances are. In turn 2, it's the Fast Five stories that are going to be dominating the NASCAR world. But before we get to all of that, let's talk Richmond International Raceway and how everything played out. I tell you what, the top 10 did not look like the top 10 at any point in time. I mean, I don't think there was probably 4 cars out there that could have won the race. I think at the end of the race, Tony Stewart had a car that was able to win. Jeff Gordon obviously had a car that was worth to win. He had a pile of junk walking into the green flag. Even though they had a great practice and a great qualifying run, he had kind of a pile of a junk car. He did nothing but walk his way backwards for the first 150 laps.
Well, you heard about the interview. He was completely upset. He's like, well, I don't know what to... You could just hear it in his voice, his tone, the way he was walking. You wouldn't have thought he was going to make the show at all, and he ended up looking he was a fast car at the end of the race, the last 50 laps.
And the same thing for Tony Stewart. Started 28th, had an absolutely horrible weekend, horrible qualifying lap. He didn't get loose or anything. That was just that bad of a car. When a top runner qualifies 28th, it's just that bad of a car. They had bad practice. They were within a second slower than the lead lap cars. It was just a bad car, but they're able to keep working on it throughout the race, stay on the lead lap, which was key, get the cautions when they needed to, work on the car, and they come up with a 4th place finish. Another car I think that was definitely a winnable car. It's hard to say. I mean, Denny Hamlin should have won that race. It all came out to pit strategy, and when it came down to the fact, and he was talking about in the post-race interview, they were trying to stay out there and run the fuel mileage like Clint Boyer was doing, who ended up winning the race. But when Gordon passed Hamlin, Hamlin knew, and they knew, that they needed to come to the pits so that so that Kyle could then pass Hamlin and remain in the chase. because it all came down to that one final point. Like we did in the championship last year, it came down to one position. It ended up coming down to actually two different positions. Gordon ended up, I'm not going to spoil it. We'll let it go. But your winner for last night, Clint Boyer, insane. 123 laps he went on that tank of gas. And the fuel window at Richmond is 90 to 100. He stretched it an extra 23 laps. And is absolutely insane. Gordon ends up coming home second. Mark Martin, the ageless wonder himself, brings it home in third. Tony Stewart fourth. Matt Kenseth fifth. Jeff Burton sixth. Brad Keselowski gets himself another top 10. He finishes seventh. Ryan Newman eighth. Greg Biffle ninth. And Kevin Harvick 10th. Ryan Newman, one of those bubble guys that was eliminated from the chase last night. He simply needed to win, and at one point in time he was leading, and it looked like he had the car to beat, but the car started backing up on him and not able to finish it. So, thoughts on Richmond last night as far as what you saw?
I really want to hand it to Mark Martin. I really thought he was going to get it there at the end. And Jeff Gordon, did you see them two run into each other there at the end of the race?
Yep,
that was awesome. I mean, Gordon knew what he had to do to get going. And Kyle Busch his car was terrible. I really feel bad about it because it's like the crew guys didn't help by not getting the lug nut tight. That put him an extra lap down. And he was on the brakes the whole time.
Yeah,
he could not get that car to turn.
Those rotors were candy apple red. I mean
it's terrible. That's not the way that's why they didn't make the chase, because they didn't honestly deserve it. They were not good enough as a whole team together. It wasn't just Kyle this time, I think.
I really think the mistake that sealed it for him was not coming into pit during that brief caution for rain. When Stewart came into pit, I can't remember who else. There was only about three cars that were leading. It was Hamlin, and then my memory's escaping me right now, but Hamlin was one of them that stayed out. And Busch ended up being one of them that stayed out, and they were talking about on the ESPN broadcast that it was a communication error between the crew chief and the driver, that the crew chief said stay out, and Kyle was saying, no, I want to come in, but they weren't able to get in there, and so they ended up having to make an extra pit stop, which, to the fault of the Busch brothers, it seems like when they get frustrated, they just kind of shut down.
Yeah.
And their walls go up, and they almost quit trying. I'm not going to say that Kyle Busch quit on the season last night, because I don't think he did. He raced his butt off. He just simply did not have the tires to move forward. Had he come in and got that pit stop, he'd have been on a much better rotation for the pit stops, and I think they'd have made the chase last night. I think that was the pivotal moment that determined it. Although, had there been a caution that came out late in the race, I think we'd have seen Kyle Busch in the chase. So it's unfortunate to see that, because Joe Gibbs Racing, who is an outstanding organization, doesn't have two of their.
They only have one guy.
Yeah,
I think they're the only one. I mean, we're going to break it down later to kind of see, but they're one of the few. And Joe Gibbs, after that race, come down there and he told him to handle it. You could see Kyle was not listening to anything Joe was saying, and then he kind of just jumped out right in front of him out of the car and took off. And I guess I don't know what you do. I don't know if you do that kind of stuff to your boss, but it was wow.
I think Joe Gibbs is the kind of guy who understands that when an athlete's upset, you just let him walk away. He said his piece. Coach, yep. He said his piece. He said, listen, handle it the best way you can. And I think Kyle handled it the best way he could have. He just simply walked away.
Yep.
And he got out of the situation. He did end up doing an interview later on, which I give him credit for, because he is under no obligation through NASCAR to do any kind of interviews. But he sat down and he did a quick interview with ESPN, and I think he said 6 words.
All right. We missed.
Yeah.
That was it.
We simply missed, and they asked him what Joe Gibbs said during the interview, and he said, handle it the best way, and there is no best way.
Yep.
And then he just kind of walked off. So I give him credit, because that's improvement. A lot of improvement as far as I'm concerned. So Clint Boyer gets himself the win, another win.
And I think and going back to Clint Boyer, I don't know how 123 laps he ran. They were just out there teasing him. It kind of really ruined the race, because he was so far in the lead. At one time, I think he lapped up to, 4th, and he was like 9 seconds in the lead the whole time. And Jeff Gordon could run on him the whole time, but wow, I could not believe Clint, how fast he was with no tires, no fuel. I mean, nobody else could do that. You saw how bad Kyle Busch went backwards when his tires were done. It was amazing.
One more lap, just one more lap, and Gordon would have had him.
I think so, yeah.
I think Gordon would have had him. I mean, he was, like they said, when Gordon took over second place, Boyer had an 8.5 second lead, and he was just able to keep backing up his corners and just keep rolling into the throttle and rolling out and taking it easy and saving himself some fuel, and that's insane. They were able to calculate that and get themselves 123 laps on a 90 to 100 tank of gas. So that's some fuel economy right there for those guys at Michael Waltrip Racing. And speaking of Michael Waltrip Racing, I keep wanting to do this. We're not going to break down the chase till turn 4.
That's the only thing I've been wanting to talk about too. So we can wait.
In turn 2, coming up in just a few minutes, we're going to do the Fast 5, 5 stories that are dominating the NASCAR world. And there has been a lot that has gone on in the last week of NASCAR, especially since we haven't been on live for, I haven't been on live for a while, but you've been a trooper. You've been on the last couple of weeks. 2 out of the 3 last shows have been live for you.
I guess, yeah. It's like me and one other person. This time it's not Bud here. Bud kind of, sitting here falling asleep on me. There'd be times, and it was like, oh my gosh, come on, Bud, get up for me.
Yeah, Bud's out there being our reporter on the go. He's out at the Boone Super Nationals. Actually, I believe they made their way home early this morning, so he's recovering right now, and we're going to do a full breakdown next weekend in the show as far as what happened and if anybody got arrested.
I've seen some pictures of some very interesting stuff from Boone, and I'll tell you what, that place is not. There's Boone and then there's racing. It's kind of different. You got to understand.
It's two completely different times. So that'll be next week on the show. But just around the corner, it's the Fast 5 stories that are dominating the NASCAR world. This is the Front Stretch presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
This is the Front Stretch on AM 590, brought to you by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
Welcome back to the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio. Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed as we always are. Each Sunday morning you can join us, and if you miss any of our podcasts, you can become a friend of the Front Stretch. Just go to your Facebook page, search the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting. Become a friend of us, and each Monday, maybe Tuesday morning, our friends over at Lost Dog Design will post our podcast, so you can hear the show again, maybe break it down a little bit more, or like I said, if you had to get up and maybe go refill your coffee cup and you missed something, and you can hear it again on our Facebook page, the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting. Become a fan of us today. We'll also keep track of all the news and information that's going on if we are able to. I mean, we're only so many people, but we try so hard to keep up to date with how the race is going, so we can keep you up to date. Quick little postings about who's doing what in the race at the time. So let's get to the Fast 5 stories that are dominating the NASCAR world. The chase is locked, but you're going to have to wait just a few more turns to find out who is in the top 12. Let's talk about who isn't in the top 12. The bubble drivers that just simply did not make it. And let's start off with Kyle Busch, missing the chase by 3 points. That is an absolute heartbreak. An absolutely talented driver. And I was thinking about it last night as I was laying there trying to go to sleep, because this is what I do instead of sleep. I think bubble scenarios and what happened. Think back to that string of 3 races where they blew engines.
Blue engines, yep.
And this comes down to the same thing we saw last year in the chase between Carl Edwards and Tony Stewart. It came down to 3 positions. That is just simply, did you not hammer it coming out of turn 4 at the end of a race and you lost just a 1 position to a driver that had a good charge coming? Did you not block him enough? It comes down to such simple things. You talked about it earlier, the dropped lug nut on the right rear on that last pit stop for the 18 team. How many positions did that cost them? And could that have been the difference? They talk about drivers that stay out and lead a lap and get a bonus point. How many times did Kyle Busch have the opportunity earlier in the season to stay out and lead a lap, get that bonus point, and maybe he didn't do it, and would that have been the difference? So 3 measly points, and he misses out on the playoffs, on the chase, and on, frankly, a lot more money for that 18 team and that Joe Gibbs Racing organization. So another driver that did not make the chase, last year's championship runner-up, Carl Edwards.
And that's the biggest shocker to me this season, is how poorly he's just ran. And it's not just him, it's the whole – I mean, Roush has ran good all season. Kenseth and Biffler just flying out there. And Carl just can't get out of his own way.
And that was a complete contrast. Last year, Biffle and Kenseth were having issues, and yet Carl was just tearing it up on the track. So it's very shocking to see that, because I don't think Carl has been in the championship hunt for the last 4 years. He has been the runner-up or within the top 5. And maybe this is just one of those where they talk about it in sports, that when you have those championship runs, you get exhausted. It's such a grueling 36-week season. And the last 10 weeks are like another 36 weeks because they're so stressful. You're going over things 3 times harder because the season's coming to an end. These are your playoffs. So maybe this is just simply a lull season for them, a bit of an off season, and we'll see him back. I think that's what we're going to see.
Well, he did switch crew chiefs in the middle of the season. He's had I think he had another kid, just a lot of stuff like that. And you never know. They could be tested right now. They could have said after the first 15 weeks, let's do a little bit of testing before the chase. If we make it, we make it. If we don't, we don't. Yeah. And you never know. Next year, he could be the championship contender again.
I would put money on it. To see that 99 team not in the chase is going to be odd, and I would mortgage the house that he's going to be in the chase next year. I will not, however, bet that I will race around Joe's Karting in a pink tutu on it, though. That I will not do. Marcus Ambrose, another driver that did not make the chase, had himself a win at Watkins Glen. That team's definitely on the up and up.
That's well-deserved. Marcus Ambrose drove his tail off these last couple weeks. Early in the season, they struggled, and after Watkins Glen, it was like, who is this guy? Where's he coming from? And I really wish that Richard Petty would have had a car in.
Yeah, definitely. And Ryan Newman, you're the next driver that finished 16th in the points as of last night from Richmond International Raceway. Had himself a win, and had an opportunity. Had the car up in the lead for a little bit, but it simply came down to he had to win the race in order to make the chase, because he like Carl Edwards and Marcus Ambrose, they could not get in on points. Uh-huh. The only drivers that could would have been Jeff Gordon or Kyle Busch. So Edwards, Ambrose, and Newman all needed to get in via a win, but they were unable to get the W, as we talked about earlier. Clint Boyer getting the win. The next car down, Joey Logano was the last bubble chaser that was trying to get in. Had an absolutely horrible night. He's done this season. I think we're just going to have to tell Logano he's going to have to move over and get restarted. There's conversation of him possibly leaving Joe Gibbs Racing early. Leaving that 20 team.
I don't like that.
Going over and jumping in that 22, since neither of them are in the chase for Penske Racing, and going ahead and getting some seat time with that organization. I don't think that's something that's going to happen. I think if Joe Gibbs Racing had somebody they could put in that 20 and make their sponsors happy, maybe it would, because it wouldn't hurt anybody. As long as the sponsors are happy, what's it really matter,
Exactly. Yep.
The deal's done, but I don't think that's going to happen, and we'll talk about that as one of the Fast Fives. So those are your bubble drivers in the first one. What's our second Fast Five?
Kind of exactly what we were talking about there. Number 2 is Kenseth going over to Joe Gibbs Racing, Logano going to Penske. Not a shocker at all. I think we all talked about it. We all kind of knew that's what was going on. The Penske ride had a couple different could be, but the whole Kenseth deal, we all saw that coming the whole time. And I think it's a good move on Joe Gibbs. I think he's going to have success with Matt Kenseth. He's getting up there in age, but he's still good. So you got to take all the credit he's got. Next year, all 3 Gibbs cars could be in the show.
And I don't know Matt's exact age, but I was shocked to find out that he has a son who, by the way, is a clone of Matt. I don't know if you've ever seen him or heard him do an interview, but he is a clone
They're
of
exactly
Matt.
Twins. It's funny. Yeah.
And I think his son is like 22, 23, which would put Matt...
I think he's a year either older or younger than me, so yeah, 22 or 20.
That's insane. Matt Kenseth does not look that old.
He's been doing it for a long time.
Excuse me. I'm gonna get a text message now. He does not look that wise.
There you go.
We've got a Jim, our very faithful listener, always gets on me when I say that drivers are old. They're not old. They're wise.
There you go.
The wise one, Mark Martin, and the getting wise one, Matt Kenseth. Not something we generally talk about, but Nationwide Series, I think this is definitely something worth bringing up. There is reports, and they're confirmed reports actually. Elliott Sadler not returning to Richard Childress Racing for 2013.
Why? Do you know why?
The only thing I can think of is if Richard Childress Racing is going to reduce their nationwide commitment, because basically I think RCR is only going to run 2 cars, and that'll be Ty and Austin. So that'd be unfortunate because
Elliott Sadler's good.
He's
fast.
Second in the points in nationwide. He's been leading the points for a long time. This just absolutely kills me. When we saw this with Matt Kenseth, to where he didn't re-sign with his organization, and he was leading in the points, and he's having a great year. Elliott Sadler is now out at Richard Childress Racing, but the good news for Elliott Sadler is he's got a very worthy opportunity to go over to Joe Gibbs Racing. Now with Joey Logano leaving and going to Penske, there's a full-time ride in that at Joe Gibbs Racing in the Nationwide Series. And Joe Gibbs Racing has talked about how they want to create a 4th team. Well, this could be Elliott's opportunity to race a season or 2 down in the Nationwide for Joe Gibbs Racing. Maybe that will be his opportunity to win himself a championship and then make his way up into the Cup Series when Joe Gibbs Racing is able to get themselves some sponsorship for a 4th team.
Who else has been running the number 20 car in the Nationwide Series? I can't.
It bounces between because they run the 20 and I believe they run the 18 in the Nationwide.
Yep.
And it bounces between Denny, Joey, Kyle, Brian Scott. Brian Scott runs the 11 down in the Nationwide.
Okay. I was trying to remember who else jumped in. I thought it wasn't Trevor Bain jumped into it. I thought somebody else younger that they could potentially jump up and get it. I mean, this year with Logano being gone, somebody's going to have a real good Busch ride because that 20 car can fly around them Nationwide.
Definitely. And I think between with the Joe Gibbs organization, they win between their 3 cars they put into the Nationwide races, and they don't always put in 3 cars into each race, but they account for at least 10 wins a season.
Uh-huh.
That Nationwide organization is dominant, and they are just insane down there. So that would be a good thing for Elliott Sadler to be able to go and do. Now, he did talk about that he has not talked to Joe Gibbs Racing or to anybody in the organization over there in the Nationwide Series that about a contract or about coming and racing for them. So we'll just have to wait and see. Silly season.
Just kind of the rumor mill right now.
Now. Do you want to do 4? You mean to do 4?
Yep, number 4. Richard Childress Racing considering Kurt Busch. Now this is, I don't know. I like it. Kurt Busch, a great driver. He needs to be somewhere. He does not need to be in that 51 car anymore if he's going to be successful again like he used to be. But Richard Childress, I didn't think he'd pick somebody like Kurt Busch up. I really did. But, I mean, Kevin Harvick is kind of the way he is. But, I mean, it's one of those that this could be really good for Childress. But then again, I don't get it because he's got his 2 grandkids trying to come in there. You ain't going to want to park Kurt Busch and put Austin Dillon in the race. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And he said that he would bring Kurt Busch over if they could find sponsorship for a 4th car. Only if they could find it. And quote, he's a very, very talented driver. I like Kurt. Kurt and I would get along. And I think he's absolutely right. Because he does kind of, he gets along very well with those fiery drivers. I mean, look at Senior and Kevin Harvick are 2 easy examples of who you could talk about when you talk about 2 fiery drivers that he's able to hold on to. Continuing to quote Richard Childress, I have now lost my spot. There's just not a sponsorship out there today that we can fill to complete a car. So right now, Kurt Busch is more than likely going to be without a ride because we've got another story coming up later in the Fast 5 as one of the bonus snippets that Phoenix Racing may not be in the Cup Series next year. They may be losing their garage, and they've had issues all season long. And frankly, this has been a venture for James Finch and Phoenix Racing that has just simply failed. They anticipated putting Kurt Busch in that car, having not necessarily the best car available, but the opportunity to pick up sponsorship, and Finch has done nothing but pour money hand over fist into that organization that he is not used to doing, along with trying to pay somebody that's as talented as Kurt Busch. So possibly Kurt Busch going to Richard Childress Racing. We'll just have to wait and see. It all depends on if they can find a 4 sponsorship. But I think that's a good opportunity for Kurt Busch. Obviously, a good opportunity for Kurt Busch. I think it'd be a good mesh up between those 2.
Exactly. Yep.
Other opportunities for Kurt Busch, real quick, before we move on to the 5th Fast 5, is that Front Row Motorsports seems to be the leading candidate where Kurt Busch is going to go. I think he'll kind of wait and see what happens for Richard Childress Racing, but I think Front Row Motorsports is going to be his backup plan. On to the fifth and final story. Richard Petty Motorsports. I got really nervous when I saw this story come across the wire the other day that they are apparently having some negotiation issues with Ford, and that it was looking like earlier in the week that they would not be running a full schedule in 2013 due to lack of funding with the Ford organization. Now I just saw this come across last night. According to sources, principals from Richard Petty Motorsports met with Richard Childress Racing Management earlier this week to discuss the possibility of becoming a satellite team similar to the relationship that the Welcome, North Carolina-based organization has with the 78 Furniture Row Motorsports organization. There is no comment from Richard Petty as far as what they're going to be doing, but obviously Richard Childress Racing running Chevys, and this could be Petty heading over to Chevy.
What? I wish their biggest problem is I understand funding, and they need Ford. Marcos Ambrose is a good driver, but Richard Petty is the king. He needs somebody better. He needs a driver.
We talked about this all season long, how unfortunate it would be if Dodge left NASCAR in 2013. Well, it's happening.
Yeah.
And that's one of your major manufacturers in the United States.
Uh-huh.
It would be absolutely horrible to not see Richard Petty Motorsports. Now, let's not kid ourselves. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. That organization hasn't really done much since the king left the car. They just haven't been able to field consistently a winning team. I think they've got a future with Marcos Ambrose, and I think they see that, but now it's coming down to simply the same thing we're seeing a lot of teams and a lot of organizations come down to. They just don't have the funding to keep up with the Richard Petty, with the Richard Childresses, the Joe Gibbs, the Hendrick. These guys that are able to pour so much money into research and development and have these top-notch cars week in and week out. A little extra side note, little snippet. Like I just mentioned, Phoenix Racing may be losing their shop at the end of 2013. And Ryan Newman officially re-signs with Stewart-Haas Racing. He has re-upped his contract for another one-year contract with Stewart-Haas Racing, so he will remain in the number 39 Chevy. That team is scrambling because they have not only lost Army as Ryan's major sponsor, but it came out earlier this week that Office Depot is not returning as a primary sponsor for Tony Stewart. And if anybody follows Tony Stewart, like myself and Bud do, Office Depot is not only a primary sponsor on his Cup car, but it's also a primary sponsor for his Sprint car team and all of his extra racing that he does. They're a major sponsor at Eldora. They sponsor his late model car. Office Depot has been a huge sponsor and supporter of Tony Stewart since he started since he came over and created Stewart-Haas Racing. That is a huge loss for them. And that's something that he is just simply going to have to manage as he's trying to do these 10 races and work on the chase and try to win himself a championship. Now he's got to worry about the sponsorship headache.
It's Tony Stewart. He could get another one.
You would only hope. You would only hope and pray because that is a primary sponsor. I believe Office Depot was a primary sponsor for 26 of the 36 races. Mobile One took up the other 10. So that's a big void to lose there, and that's a lot of money that these organizations need. So that is the Fast Five stories that are dominating the NASCAR world. This is the front stretch, just around the corner, turn 3. We're going to talk about something we're not quite sure yet, but we'll come up with something to entertain the masses nonetheless. This is the front stretch presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
You're listening to The Front Stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio. Brought to you by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Online at joeskarting.com.
Welcome back to The Front Stretch. This is Turn 3, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located on 23rd Ave, next to AMC Theaters, and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. Get to Joe's today. Get yourself some fast-paced white-knuckle racing where the only speed restriction is how fast you are. And I've given this little tip out before, and I'll give it to you again. The key to going faster around that track is actually touching the brake.
Yes.
It
always has been.
It helps, but people just seem to not understand it. There is a hairpin turn right there where the crowd sits and watches the racing that you got to brake fairly heavily in order to get around that corner right, but people just seem to think they can roll out of the throttle and make it around and roll back in, but it actually slows you down considerably. You'll shave a second or two off your time. So get down to Joe's today, 23rd Avenue next to AMC Theaters, the IMAX Theater there in Council Bluffs, next to Mid-America Center, Bass Pro Shops in that area. You can go down there and just have a great time. Send the kids over to watch a movie and go do yourself some racing over to Quaker Steak and Lube and get a beer, and then the kids can get done with their kiddie movie, and you can have a good night out. So get to Joe's Karting today, 23rd Avenue next to AMC Theaters in Council Bluffs. We've called an audible, and we've decided what we're going to do for Turn 3. See, this is what happens when the race ends at 1 a.m., and I've had myself a 14-hour day of entertaining 4 little girls at Adventureland. 3.5, 4 hours of driving back and forth between my hometown, Adventureland, and home, and then watching a race that went between rain. Okay, you know what? I was just lazy and I didn't do the sheets.
You know what? It happens sometimes. I ain't going to be mad at you. I kind of came in here going, wow. I mean, I don't know if I could hardly get myself up this morning. 1 o'clock in the morning, the race get done. And then, of course, once the adrenaline gets down, it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. You're ready to go to sleep. And I mean, like you said, I stay up and I think about chase scenarios. It was like, and I was thinking the exact same thing. It's the weirdest deal. I was sitting there going, wow, I cannot believe this, and that. And I guess we're kind of weird.
So I don't think we're weird. I think we're NASCAR fans. This is perfectly acceptable.
Rednecks.
Yes. So let's break down the bottom 6 of the chase. As they are going to be walking into Chicagoland 1 week from today, they'll be walking in and starting the chase. Let's talk about the guy who made his way in last night, strictly on points, and something that he proved me wrong. We talked about it weeks and weeks and weeks ago when Jeff Gordon's woes were at their peak, and I believe he was about 24th in points, 27th in points, actually, that the only way he was going to get into the chase was if he won enough races to surpass everybody else. I didn't think he was going to get on points.
Well, with how bad the first part of the season was, I mean, how many breakdowns did he have in a row there? It was like he was so far behind. I think in week 7 or 8, what was he? Probably 25th in points. I mean, just something terrible where we were talking the first 5 weeks, he ain't going to make it. He ain't going to make it. He ain't going to make it. Then all of a sudden, about a month ago, I think we all kind of see him sneaking, and we go, wow, Jeff Gordon's going to end up making this thing. And he didn't do it by the wins, which is very shocking. He actually raced his way in.
Oh, my gosh.
He's a legend. He's been doing it for a long time.
Nope, I got the wrong sheet in there. I apologize. But post Talladega, race number 9, he was 33rd in the points. 33rd in the points, and he has made his way back all the way to making himself in the chase. So let's talk about what we'll move on past what he has overcome and actually talk about what his future looks like. I got to tell you, despite how good he ran last night, I have a tough time hitching my horse to his wagon and saying that he's going to win the chase because they simply have had a season of misses, of breakdowns, of bad calls, and of bad setups.
He's been running so strong lately, though. I mean, what's he had? 3 second places in the past 4 races?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been so strong lately. And I mean, it might just be that they were pushing that hard for him to make the chase. But if they keep what they got going right now, I mean, he's a top 5 car in my book.
He definitely had fast cars in the beginning of the season. Hendrick this is just calling the sun bright. It's like welcome Captain Obvious when you talk about Hendrick having great cars. But him and Casey Kane both had the same issue. They had incredibly fast cars. But they were having mechanical issues, and they were just simply getting caught up in accidents. I mean, think back to leading at Martinsville. Him and Jimmy Johnson were coming down to the wire. They were going to be, battling for the win, and then Clint Boyer ducks underneath and wrecks them both. And there goes a win for Jeff Gordon, who he would have gotten. Now we know he would have got into the chase off of that win. So there's hope for Gordon, and I would absolutely love to see him win himself another championship. Put one under the belt and see that aggressive style come out that we saw last night, because that's the Jeff Gordon that won himself 4 championships back in the day. And he's kind of mellowed out in the last few years, so it's going to be tough to say. Can he resurrect that aggressive style of driving where he will move you rather than be patient and wait?
I ain't gonna see. I don't see Gordon doing that ever again. And I knew he was in the situation yesterday, and I think Mark actually knew that he was there. And I don't think they meant to rub like they did, but it was one of those. Gordon was faster. He drove it in. Mark, what did he do? Spin the tires?
Yeah, I think so.
It was when he spun the tires, and it was just one of those. Mark lightly screwed up, and he didn't want to put himself on the fence by jumping up as quick as he could out of the
right.
groove, but Gordon just had to make a bold move there, and he did it, and Kyle Busch just couldn't. So
right. Casey Kane makes his way into the chase off of 2 wins. He actually had fewer points than Jeff Gordon did, but because he had himself more wins, he is seated higher. He will start the chase 11th. He's got himself 2 poles, 2 top 10s, 2 wins, 7 top 5s, 13 top 10s. Casey Kane's chances for winning this chase.
I've always liked Casey Kane. I got him. I mean, and right here, I just wrote down what I think my top 12 are going to be.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So, I think Casey Kane. If Jimmy ain't going to do it, Casey Kane's going to do it. That's who I've had. I've had him for a while. Earlier this season, he had so many breakdowns, just like Gordon did. This second half of the season, he's been so fast. I really think Casey Kane's going to be hard to beat. And this last year in the Red Bull team, he was so fast these last 10 races. And if he would have been in the chase, they said he would have got like 3rd or 4th in points.
Right.
And this year, with a good team and a good driver, he is going to be hard to beat.
I'm gonna contradict you on this one. I think they peaked at the wrong time of the season, and I think they're on their downward slope. Not that they're a bad organization, not that it's bad driver, bad crew chief, bad anything like that. I think that they just peaked at the wrong time, and that they're now kind of on a cool down phase. I see him finishing in the chase, probably 7th, maybe 8th. That's where I see Casey Kane finishing, but I don't see him winning the chase. I don't see him in the top 5. Martin Truex Jr., 10th in the points. He's got himself 2,000 points. Now, it's important to point out that 9th through 12th has the exact same amount of points. Casey Kane and Jeff Gordon both have a win, but they needed that win and their points to get into the chase, so they don't get any bonus points. Martin Truex Jr. and Kevin Harvick, who are 10th and 9th respectively, both do not have a win. Martin Truex Jr., he's kind of one of those things where you look at his stats, 1 pole, 6 top 5s, 14 top 10s, but no wins. But he just seemed to be up there consistently for that Michael Waltrip Racing 56 car.
Him and Harvick, I mean, we're going to get to him too. They're kind of like, Harvick's got the name, where'd you come from, Harvick? But yeah. Truex is kind of like, he had very good races at the beginning of the season, and he just kind of held on from there. He didn't have any fallouts that really screwed him up. He didn't get into bad wrecks. He was just always up there at about 10th to 15th,
yep.
And that's all you need to be. It's consistency.
And I think he could have had a couple of wins under his belt already.
Which race was it? He was just flying. He ended up 2nd.
Kansas. I think
was
it
it the
Kansas.
first race at Kansas? It was. You are 100% correct. And who won? Was it
Hamlin?
Hamlin?
Yeah, and it was just simply that I think Hamlin came in and got tires like 5 laps after Truex Jr. did and passed him on the last lap. And that was a heartbreaker for Truex because he led 173 laps.
Yeah, I knew it was something like that. Hometown track, Kansas. What am I thinking?
That was a heartbreaker for those guys in the 56 team. Moving on to Kevin Harvick. Where did he come from? Harvick slowly been dropping in the points, but stays within the top 10, able to hold on to it. Doesn't have himself a win. 4 top 5s, 11 top 10s. How's that Richard Childress Racing 29 looking?
You know what? It's the exact same. Excuse me. It's the exact same. He's going to be consistent. Last year he ended up 3rd in points. This year he's not going to get 3rd. I don't believe in my book. He's just going to consistently be up there. And I mean, he's solid. I had to throw him right in the middle there of the points, probably around 7th place there, 6th, 7th, because that's just consistently where he's going to be. He's not going to fall out any races, but he isn't going to win any of the last 10 either. And
he has this ability to just, what you need to do in all sporting events, for the most part, stick around. You just have to stick around. And you have to keep yourself up into the top, some tracks top 15, some tracks top 10. When you do that, you're setting yourself up for an opportunity for the last pit stop and the last run to make your way up to the front and win the race and steal it from somebody. And Harvick and that organization has got it. And he seems revitalized now that Gil Martin's back on the pit box. Something we haven't. I can't remember if we talked about it last weekend.
Me and Bud talked about it.
That Gil Martin replaced back up on the pit box. I tell you what, you talk about an uncomfortable and awkward conversation. I'm Kevin Harvick. Hey, Gil, I know that at the end of last season, I specially requested that we fire you and we remove you from being my crew chief, but could you come back and fix it? Because all of a sudden I'm doing horrible. I mean, to swallow your pride like that and have to kind of say, hey, sorry, can you come back? That takes a lot. So I think Harvick's going to be a top 5 contender. I just don't see him winning it, but I think he's a top 5 contender. How about our Daytona 500 winner? One win under his belt. It happens to be that Daytona 500 win. The two, former Sprint Cup champion, Matt Kenseth, about to leave his organization. He's the first driver with one win, so he's got the first set of bonus points, 2,003 points. He sits 8th in the seeding.
I think he's going to be just like he's got too much stuff going right now. He's leaving Roush. He hasn't been doing good these last about 5-6 races. I don't have him staying way up there in the points. I think his teammate will, but he's going to fall off the face of the earth here this last chase races, I believe. And who knows? He could go out there and win the next 3 races, but I just don't see it happening. He only won one race. It was the first one, and he's just going to fall off.
I completely agree. How about Junior? Sitting 7th in the seedings, got himself a win, 10 top 5s, 17 top 10s. He's been the model for consistency all season long, and I think this is the lowest he has been in the chase. In the point standings all season long. He led for a while. He sat between 4th and 2nd for quite a while. He's just kind of bounced around. But he's kind of, like we've talked about with Matt, he's kind of disappeared the last couple of races.
The thing is with Junior, and it has been, I think, his whole career, is him and his team. I don't know what the deal is. The crew chief, pit, car owner guys, they can't finish. They just can't pull that win under their belt. And they'll run good, and then something's got to happen.
Yeah.
Something's got to get screwed up on pit lane. Just something always happens. They just can't finish.
Although I think in the next year to 2 years, Steve Letarte will get him a championship.
I hope so. I really do.
That's just you see so much of a change between Dale from last year and Dale from this year, and even Dale from 2 years ago. He's confident. He's happy. He's a completely different guy now that Steve Letarte has stepped up on that pit box. On to number 6, and the final one we're going to break down in turn 3. Clint Bowyer got himself a win last night, so he's got 2 wins on the season. 6 top 5s, 15 top 10s. How does Clint sit for you in the chase?
You know what? Clint Bowyer is probably my personal favorite racer because I've known him and just know his background and everything. I got him. What do I got? 10, 12, 10. I got him at 8th right now because I just think that he's just not fast enough to be with those guys yet. He's hit and miss. At certain tracks, he's just faster than heck, and then other tracks, he's running 20th. So I not positive with him yet. First year at Michael Waltrip racing, though, I think he's really turned the program around, and I like what he did for Michael Waltrip, and I think next year he's going to be a contender. But this year, I think he's going to be sitting, running about 10th every week. He ain't going to be winning races.
I agree. When he's got a car, he is faster than anybody on that track.
Yes.
I mean, and when he's got a good car, his talent level can take that car to the next level. But it just seems like more often than not, he's not able to pick that car up and overcome some of the issues they may be having. The top 5 just around the corner. We'll break down the top 5 in the chase and what we think they're going to land. This is the Front Stretch presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
This is the Front Stretch on AM 590, brought to you by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
Well, we're entering the 4th and final turn here on the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio. Moving into turn 4, we're about ready to take the checkered flag, and this is salvaged by Kaziski Auto Parts. Looking for quality used parts to get your car and truck back on the road? Give an experienced salesperson a call today at Kaziski Auto Parts. You can even talk to Andrew himself. 402-731-4592. You can also stop by 50th and I Street. We talked about it during the heat of the summer that air conditioner compressors were the major seller. Has it kind of balanced out now?
It has been. We still still hit and miss every so often. Everybody's still trying to get theirs fixed up. But yeah, right now those have died down quite a bit.
So we're probably, especially with this morning, I know I almost kicked my heater on in my truck.
I did.
Heater core is going to be the big thing in November and December.
We usually find those actually going bad more in the summertime than we do in the winter. So,
oh really?
I don't exactly know what's going to be the next hot topic here. It's kind of one of those. All the kids go back to college, so nobody's working on their cars yet until about a month or two into it when they start wrecking them and ruining their cars. So that's usually what we see.
Kaziski Auto Parts is where you can get quality used parts with a lifetime warranty. They are Team PRP, premium recycled parts. Basically, it's very simple. You blow an alternator, it quits working on you. Instead of going down to one of these high-priced auto parts stores and paying $100, maybe $150 to get yourself an alternator, you could walk down to Kaziski Auto Parts, talk to Andrew, and say, "Hey, I've got a ¡86 Cutlass." I don't even know if Cutlass was coming out in '86.
You were pushing it there,
okay.
Yeah.
But my alternator's bad. He'll look it up for you. He'll find the part for you, and then and you've got yourself a lifetime warranty on that part. So it is much cheaper than going to an auto parts store and tracking it down there. And frankly, these guys are knowledgeable. I love coming into Kaziski Auto Parts and listening to you guys talk about these cars because I go to these auto parts stores and all I hear is, "Yeah, this is the part you need." Oh, that's great. Hey, what do I do to install it? Oh, you put this bolt there.
Well, you got to have a kind of a background to work in it. A lot of people think a salvage yard, is a junkyard. It's even you go to the dealerships, it's kind of.
Let me go get Jim. He's been here for 20 years.
There you go.
Oh, Jim's on lunch. You're on your own. Oh, great. Well, you walk in. Andrew actually works in this stuff, and he'll take you through it. He knows these stuff. Very knowledgeable team at Kaziski Auto Parts. 50th and I Street, and 731-4592 is the number you can call. Let's keep breaking down the top five for the chase. Andrew, Greg Biffle sits fifth in the chase. 2 poles on the season, 2 wins on the season, 5. I'm telling you, my dyslexia is just really coming out this morning. 10 top 5s, 15 top 10s. He's got himself 2,006 points. He is tied with Clint Boyer, but because he's got more top 5s and top 10s, he is seated higher in the chase. So where do you see Greg Biffle in that 16 team?
I got him at 6th because I think he's going to be very close. I think it's going to be a real battle. Him. It's going to be 4th through about 6th. Those 3 guys are all going to be real close at the end of the season. The top 3 are going to be out front, but I think Greg Biffle's going to run good, and I think he might actually pop 1 win off this last 10 races because he's been so close, and he's very fast. I mean, how many top 10s or top 5s did he have? 10?
Yes.
10 top 5s. I mean, he's going to be in the top 5 to top 10 just about every single race in the chase.
I agree with you. I think he is I think he would sit somewhere in my standings, probably finishing somewhere between 8th and 5th. Greg's never been one that has blown the doors off of it for me. He's never really been one that I've sat there and said, "Wow, what a drive!" He's consistent though, and he's a great driver. So I think he's going to win a championship eventually in his career. I don't think this is the year for him. Our favorite driver, Bad Brad, the Blue Deuce, sits 4th in the points, and I chuckle because now you're glaring at me. 3 wins on the season, 10 top 5s, 15 top 10s. Where do you have Bad Brad sitting?
Well, I haven't. I wish I could put him about 43rd, but I can't do that. I really think he's going to probably end up squeezing in the top 5. I got him at 9th because I want him behind my guy Clint Boyer, but he's really fast. I think he's going to be tough. He'll win 1 or 2 in the chase, and sad to say it, I hope he doesn't win at Kansas again. I went down there, and I had to sit through that, and I go, "You've got to be kidding me." But he's fast. He's good. He's just not my kind of driver, not my kind of talker. I just don't get along with the Keselowski team.
Yeah, I think he won in the is it the April race last year?
Yep.
And Johnson won the October race last year.
Uh-huh.
So Brad just, there's something about him. You try to stay non-biased and only, but you know what? I don't care. This is our show. I'm going to be biased. There's just something about him I don't like.
Well, the first time I ever heard of him, let me tell you I'm going to jump on my soapbox here real quick. He was running for Dale Jr.
Keep in mind, we've only got about 4 minutes.
We got it.
Okay.
He was running for Dale Jr., and he goes, "Dale Jr. picked me because I'm Brad Keselowski. He wants me because I'm good." And I go, "Who is this guy?" I never even heard of him. I just wanted to kill him ever since then.
Confident, borderline cocky.
Yes.
But he backs it up from time to time. We just talked about with Greg Biffle, he doesn't blow the doors off me. There is a couple of times when Brad does blow the doors off of him for me. I mean, he just simply can drive a car. So, very talented driver. I see him finishing in the top 5 also. Tony Stewart in third. He is 3 wins on the season, 10 top 5s, 12 top 10s. He's got himself a pole also, which just came a couple of weeks ago. Where do you see last year's Sprint Cup champion finishing this year? He's
going to contend for the win, but I got him at third. He's going to be first, second area, all the way up to about 7 or 8 into it, and then I got Casey passing him. But I really think that Stewart's going to be tough again. He hasn't looked great lately, but I really, really know it's Tony Stewart. He's good. Last year, he dominated the chase. He's going to be tough. He's going to be close to the championship.
Shocker. Okay, shocker. I've got him repeating.
Okay.
Everyone, and I've heard ESPN, I've heard Satellite Sirius Radio. You just mentioned it, that he has been struggling lately. He actually has not been struggling lately. He has, granted, he's finished outside of the top 20, except last night, the last 4 races. Except if you look at the fact he has been up in the top 5 running with those guys, but he wrecked, he blew an engine, he ran out of gas. He had an issue that was not car-related, talent-related. It was mechanical, or he got tangled with somebody and wrecked. So with that being said, I've got him winning the championship. I think Tony is frustrated right now. I think he was very frustrated walking into last night, but the way they came back is going to give him that confidence that he so desperately needs to put the gusto behind the wheel and win himself another championship. I've got him winning the championship. Jimmie Johnson, the old 5-time, sitting second in the points, 3 wins on the season, 12 top 5s, 17 top 10s. Probably one of the best statistics all along the board you'll see in the chase this year. How's the 48 team fare for you?
6-time champion.
I just threw up a little bit. I can't disagree with you because you never discount Jimmie Johnson at 48 team. Just
never.
Like you never discount Tom Brady and the Patriots. You never discount the Yankees or the Red Sox, except for this year with the Red Sox. You never discount some of these teams that they've got it. They know what they're doing. That's what the 48 is. You've got one of the best drivers he's going to go down as one of the best drivers in all of history. And you've got the best crew chief in all of history.
That's the key right there, the best crew chief.
And then you've got the best team in all of history. So you never count these guys out. Denny Hamlin, our last guy in the chase, he will start first in the points. 4 wins on the season, 11 top 5s, 13 top 10s. Where do you have Hamlin?
I got him at 4th because he's going to have a break in one of these. He's going to break and run about 30-something, so I got him about 4th, but he's going to be tough to beat. I think them top 3 are going to be out there, and then the next 3, and then that's just going to how it's going to be. It's going to be 3, 3, and probably the next 6. So.
Yep. Okay. So that is our top 5 as far as the chase is contending. Next weekend, we are recorded again. We will break down Chicagoland. We'll talk with Buddy Ray as far as what happened at Boone. Did he actually get arrested? I've seen things on Facebook. That's all I'm going to say so far. There's a possibility. This was Turn 4 presented by Kaziski Auto Parts. Looking for quality used parts to get your car or truck back on the road? Get to Kaziski Auto Parts, 50th and I Street, 402-731-4592. Andrew, you're there every day from about 8 a.m. to about 5:30, right?
Yep.
And you'll be willing and ready. As soon as you walk in the door, you're going to see Andrew's bright and shiny face, ready to help you get your car or truck back on the road. Like we talked about, next weekend, we're going to break down Chicagoland, what's going to happen the first race in the chase, and we'll get back on schedule as far as our interviews are concerned. We'll talk with Buddy, get him back in the seat. Andrew, where are you going to be running at Friday and Saturday?
I'm heading to Pittsburgh. I'm going to go watch the New York Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers football game. I'm a huge Jets fan, and so I'm going to take off and go to an NFL game.
Well, that's have a great time at that. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been The Front Stretch presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.